Well, it's been a while, but the web show is back. Sorry about the slight...
We've been a bit busy finishing a feature documentary, you may have heard.
Life After the Navigator. So there is a tie-in with this interview. Randall Kleiser, one of the most amazing directors in Hollywood, is the executive producer of Life After the Navigator. So we have an interview with him for this week's web show.
And he has been an enormous help through the whole project. So thank you, Randall, for all of your help and involvement. He's a very mentoring guy. He basically has been very helpful to people in the film community. He's had an amazing career. Grew up with, through the whole film ranks with the likes of George Lucas and Spielberg and all these fantastic people. And he really has helped pay it back to filmmakers that are sort of starting out and on their journey.
To which we are most grateful. Now, before we get into the interview, and we will keep this short, what is Life After the Navigator, I hear you ask? Well, if you don't already know, documentary about Flight of the Navigator, which Randall directed. And,
great film, loved it.
Amazing, and a look at the life of Joey Kramer. We are nearly finished. You can pre-order this Blu-ray and it comes with this free patch.
Be one of the crew, be one of the Life After Navigator crew. I've got mine sewed onto my jacket. It looks very, very dapper.
If you pre-order from lifeafterthenavigator.com before the 9th of November, you not only get the region-free Blu-ray. Region-free Blu-ray with over 70 minutes of bonus features and a 12-page collector's booklet. You also get this patch.
More! The patch as well!
I know, but without further ado, Mr. Randall Kleiser. So as part of the celebration of the launch of our feature documentary Life After the Navigator, which celebrates Flight of the Navigator, directed by Randall Kleiser kindly came on board the documentary as executive producer, and he is with me today on the web show. Randall, how are you?
I'm good here in LA. It's nice and sunny, and I hear that in London it's not so good, huh?
It's pretty rainy today, to be fair, but we cope. We're used to it. Get straight into it. Life After the Navigator, thank you so much for all your time and effort you have helped me with on this journey. What were your initial impressions when I first spoke to you about the idea of doing a documentary about Joe's life, but also celebrating this film that you did that has become so iconic?
So many people come up to me and tell me that they love that movie, Flight of the Navigator. And, it was, I was in shock when I first saw the report that Joey Kramer had robbed a bank. It said, what? I mean, that's so unlike him. He seemed like such a normal kid. And I was fascinated about what happened, what's behind all that. And so, I didn't know how to reach him. And it took me quite a while to figure out how to get a hold of him. I think I tracked down his mother, perhaps, in Canada. And I asked her to get me his address, or maybe he wrote to me. I don't know how it first happened, but he wrote to me from jail and told me what had happened and the story of how he got involved in drugs and trying to find a place to get help. And the only place he could find was this program that was in the jail. The only way he could get into the program was to get into jail. And so he came up with this crazy idea of robbing a bank. So this documentary, when you told me about it, sounded like a wonderful idea, because what a story. I mean, this almost sounds like a movie in itself, and now it is.
And when you saw, because you've been so helpful along this process of watching rough cuts and giving me notes back, which I can't tell you how much that was appreciated. When you saw his story in more detail, did you know any of that other than just the bank element? And what did you think of that?
The thing that really impressed me about learning something new about this whole situation was when I learned that Joe's father told him at some point that he should go kill himself. Now, anytime a father says that to a kid, of course there's going to be problems. And that's what led him into drugs and stealing, and he just went downhill, because he was so emotionally upset by that. And who wouldn't be? So that was kind of a trigger that made it clear to me that he still was a good kid, and he just went through hell.
And you have spoken before about the last time you had seen him in person was when you filmed It's My Party. He was a stand-in for Eric Roberts. The time between Flight of the Navigator and It's My Party, did you have regular contact with him during those 10 years?
I didn't have any real contact with Joey after the movie. And it was when I knew that he probably could use a job, and we were making It's My Party, and I thought he might be interested in working on it. in some capacity, and he ended up being a stand-in for Eric Roberts. And so at that time, I guess he had done drugs and all that. It wasn't obvious to me. He seemed like the same old Joey that I knew, and he hid whatever his demons were from me at that time. So that's another reason why I was surprised when I heard that he had robbed the bank.
And I think we've been very lucky in the process of this documentary to have connected with him. And thankfully, you had connected with him first, and he passed on your email to me. And we started filming quite soon after he came out of jail. And I think it's really great that you can see this 2-3 year journey, and hopefully his story inspires others. Because before, when he first came out, I don't think he realized how much the Flight of the Navigator was still so loved to so many people.
Yes, when the movie came out, of course, it was okay, but it wasn't a big hit. But ever since then, it's grown and grown as people have discovered it on VHS and then on DVD and then Blu-ray. So, it keeps going and going. And I think it's because of the fact that it has a good family story. It has kind of a good message, too, about family values and love. And it has a lot of comedy in it from the spaceship.
Yes, it does. And I said this just before we started recording, that I know that with your career, you get asked so many questions about specific films because there are so many iconic films in your body of work. So I thought I would try and keep general questions about being a director, but you were just touching on Flight of the Navigator and how it was considered okay at first and it became so popular. Obviously, you have Grease, which I think up until, I may be wrong, but up until Beauty and the Beast a couple of years ago was the highest grossing musical of all time. And then you obviously have films like Blue Lagoon and White Fang and all these films that stand the test of time in film history. When you're on set, do you know that a film is going to be a hit or so iconic, or like 30, 40 years later? Can you tell when you're on set?
No, you can't. When we just do the work and try to make it as good as we can. I mean, nobody ever thought Grease was going to be a big hit. Blue Lagoon, we had no idea. White Fang continues to be one that people love too. And I have another movie that I was involved with that's kind of a cult movie called North Shore, about surfing. And probably every surfer in the world can quote lines from that movie for some reason. They love it. They run it over and over again. So it's very heartening to have this kind of response, even though when all these movies came out, except for Grease and Blue Lagoon, they were not huge hits, but over time, people have caught up with them.
When I first met you is actually at the Life After Flash LA screening, and I have to say I didn't expect you to turn up. You invite people to these things, they're so busy, and this Hollywood director, why would he come to this LA screening? But you came, and it really meant so much to me as this filmmaker with then the first documentary. And it felt to me, even during this process, that you've been really supportive of students straight out of film school and independent filmmakers. Is that a conscious decision for you to be so supportive of people like us?
I came from USC Film School, so I know what it's like to be a student, although it was many, many years ago. And trying to get off the ground a project is very, very hard. Trying to raise the money, trying to get people interested, trying to get actors to cooperate. It's a lot of work, and you spent 3 years on this. So, I mean, I haven't heard of anybody with that kind of tenacity. I did enjoy your first film, Life After Flash. And the reason I showed up is because I remember Flash Gordon. And I thought, what an interesting idea to go after, when you have a movie that so many people love, you wonder how it affected the people involved. And it's a good idea. I think you're doing another one now, right? Another Life After?
It's going to be a series, we hope. So Life After Atreyu, which is Never Ending Story, is the third one. And we have a few more, and maybe Life After Grease, if, you never know.
I was going to ask you, are they all going to be after science fiction movies, or are you going to branch out to other films?
Films that I grew up with and love is the general theme of the Life After series, because you do, as an independent filmmaker, you need to love what you're working on. So oh, yeah. I just thought I wanted to be celebrating these films that meant so much to my childhood.
Especially when you spend as much time as you have on them.
I know. Well, Flash was 5 years. But Yeah, it was a long time. But again, speaking of Greece, and we had Greece just celebrated its 40th anniversary a couple of years ago, and Flight of the Navigator, we had that great reunion, which if people watch the documentary, they will see. Is it unusual? It just feels like you're so close still to all the cast and crew. And is that unusual to work on a film and then still be connected all these years later?
On some films, yes. I mean, like for instance, this is this 40th anniversary of the Blue Lagoon, and that experience was very unique. You're never supposed to say very unique. That was my teacher, Nina Foch, told me that. Unique means very. Anyhow, it was unique to be on an island for 3 months with a crew, living and working with them with no outside influence. So that experience, we really all became friends and have been ever since. You know, it's like a bonding experience when you spend that much time together. It's like almost like going to summer camp together. Other movies, you come and go, you show up, you do the job, and you go home. So it depends on which film it is.
The process of actually getting attached to a project as director, do you have to, I guess maybe particularly in your earlier films, do you have to pitch the project or your vision to be attached, or are you on it from the very beginning and you almost help produce it? What is kind of, I guess, I don't want to say the norm, but what has been your experience on becoming attached to projects?
I did my own student films, and then I started working as a director for hire on television. I did like a bunch of television episodes, and then I did television movies like Boy in the Plastic Bubble and The Gathering, and then Grease. And so that was a director for hire too. It was not my project. The first time I got a chance to do my own project was The Blue Lagoon. And then after that, Summer Lovers. And then I worked as a director for hire for a while. And then so I go back and forth from being for hire and doing my own projects. And It's My Party was one that I did that was very hard to get off the ground. Another one that I really, really loved was one I shot over there where you are in England, called Getting It Right. And that was a small movie that not many people have seen, but it's one of my favorites, where I got to work with John Gielgud and Jane Harkes and Lynn Redgrave, Peter Cook, Helena Bonham Carter. Great English actors and a great English crew. So that was one of my best experiences shooting in England.
Knowing what you know now in your amazing career, would you go back and do anything differently for any of your films?
There were a couple movies that I didn't do that I wish I had done. I was in the running for a couple movies, and for some reason I didn't choose to do them. And that's the only thing I can think of that I would have gone back and changed. The movies that I've made, I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. I don't think I could have really done anything differently. There's so many, when you're making a movie, there's so many ways you're being pulled left and right by different forces. You know, you have the studio telling you one thing, the distributor saying something else, the producer might have ideas, and you have to go through them and make the best you can. And I think I just plowed through on all these films the best I could, and I wouldn't like to go back and do any of them again.
You have mentioned before that seeing the Ten Commandments really affected you as a kid because of the special effects in that film. And, you know, I have films like Grease and Flight of the Navigator, and then, you know, Goonies and E.T. and all these films that really affect you as a kid that stay with you. Do you have any other films that you grew up with that is your Flight of the Navigator that you kind of associate with your childhood?
Well, that's a good question. I think Darby O'Gill and the Little People was one, because I was just amazed by the visuals of that, the special effects, the way they made the leprechauns. And the reason that that's so effective is that most of it was done in the camera with something called forced perspective, where you have a set that's built in two scales, when one's a big set and one's a small set, and you have the camera shoot. By lining it up a certain way, it looks like the person's smaller and one's bigger. And I could tell that it was, even as a kid, I could tell that this was something special. It wasn't normal visual effects. And I did a lot of research to find out how they did it, and I learned how they did it. And then years later, when I was at Walt Disney Studios making Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, I got to do the same technique on the very same sound stages that they shot Darby O'Gill. So that was very, very exciting to do that.
So it seems like as a kid you were always still drawn to special effects.
Yes, I like the movie magic. You know, the Ten Commandments was not only the fact that the opening of the Red Sea was so impressive, but it was also the cinematography, the colors, the music, the theatricality. I mean, at the beginning of that movie, Cecil B. DeMille, the director, comes out on stage and talks directly to the audience and says, "You're going to see this movie I made." And that was where I figured out, oh, there's somebody who makes a movie. There's a director who stands there behind the cameras and creates it. I didn't know that up until then. And that's what made me want to become a director.
Is there anyone that you haven't worked with that you would have liked to, really like to?
I always loved Boris Karloff as a kid. He was one of my favorite actors. But today I would say the two actors I would love to work with are Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro. Those two have had careers that I've just loved, and I just find them so fascinating. And who wouldn't want to work with them?
If there's anyone out there watching this who wants to be a director, wants to do what you're doing, what advice would you give them?
I would say the best way to get a career today is to make a short film that comes from the heart, something that is emotional to you, something that you don't really want to talk about, maybe something that's so deep and personal that it's embarrassing or scary to reveal. And if you do that, it'll come across to the audience and people will notice it.
What is the best thing about being a director and the worst thing about being a director?
I think the best thing about being a director is the feeling on a set of a family that's all helping you make your vision come to life, that support that you get from everybody and all the ideas they come up with to help you. And the worst thing is the hours. And after you've been shooting for days and days and days, you wake up and you look at the script that you have to do that day and you think, how am I going to make this really magical? How do I make this work? I'm so tired, you know. I think you get tired, very tired on directing a movie because you're always on. There's always pressure. And it's hard to sleep at night because you're always thinking about what you're going to do the next day or what you did that day that didn't work.
Do you find then that you are always having to think on your feet and you're always worrying about what's going to happen that day, that you don't take in the overall experience about the making of the film, and maybe it's a hindsight thing that you can actually sit back and go, actually that was really a great film to work on, but you have blinders? Or can you kind of stop mid-production and take it in?
You probably can't stop mid-production, take it in, because it's like there's a fire hose shooting in your face. Every moment you're a director, people are asking you questions. You're having to think about things like how to stay on schedule, how to stay on budget, how to make it interesting, how to make that scene come to life, how to deal with the actors and make them do their best work, how to deal with all the pressures and the hassles that will come up every time, every day. There's always problems. There's always somebody on the set who is your enemy, who's giving you a hard time. I mean, all those things happen. So it's, you just can't, I've never been able to like stand back and say, oh, this is not a bad experience. It's all just dealing with the moment, things that happen at that moment.
You recently finished Defrost, this amazing, with your tech, special effects, visual effects genius that you are, this VR project. Do you have anything else coming up that you can share with anybody?
I have, I'm writing another book. I wrote Grease Director's Notebook, and now I'm working on another one, and I'm also working on one called Drawing Directors, because I've been drawing other directors for the last 20 years, and I'm putting them all together in a book that talks about my feelings about that director and his work, and then the picture on the other side. And I have a couple movies that I'm close to launching, you know, and I'm building some sound stages in Hollywood that will allow directors to do virtual production. All those things are keeping me busy. There's a series I'm working on, and I'm hoping to do one of these movies on these smart stages that we're building.
Randall, I know that you're incredibly busy as always, so I won't take up any more of your time, but Thank you so much for speaking today. Thank you so much for helping me with Life After the Navigator. I'm very excited to show you the official finished product that you haven't quite seen, I don't think, and looking forward to getting that out to everyone. So thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed working with you, Lisa, and good luck on the project.
Great interview there. If you are a fan of Grease, we got this fantastic book recently, which is the director's notes, which is all of Randall's notes on the film, storyboards, script, how he was tackling it. It's brilliant. If you are a fan, you need this on your bookshelf or coffee table. Do we have a coffee table? We haven't even got a coffee table. We do have a bookshelf though, and it's on it.
Yes, highly recommended. You can get it online. While we're doing mini plugs, don't forget Second Sight Films, which is secondsightfilms.co.uk. Flight of the Navigator is available, and you get there's a booklet of storyboards, there's a poster, there's some bonus features.
You know what that'd sit really well next to on the shelf?
Life After the Navigator.
You could have the compendium pair. Get ordering, lovely people.
That's right. So again, lifeafterthenavigator.com takes you through to the shop where you can pre-order, you get the patch, bonus features, help support independent film. And that is the web show for this week. We will be back. We're not doing weekly shows anymore.
We're all about quality as opposed to quantity. We realise that trying to do every week, trying to get people lined up so we have quality interviews for you, it's difficult. It's difficult to get slots in their diaries. So we've decided that we're only going to do a show when we have a quality interview for you. It's not that we're disappearing, we're staying, but we will be bringing you quality stuff. So get that bell clicked, subscribed. And then it will alert you to this fantastic content.
Yes, and go check out all the other interviews we have done thus far. Until then, we will see you next episode.
Could be soon, might be not quite so soon, but it's going to be good.